Hello, friend. Welcome to Speech Goods, a podcast where we showcase awesome SLPs doing awesome traditional and non-traditional SLP things. Myself and the guests on the show are here to talk about the goods, the bads, and the untangible parts of ourselves and our SLP careers, and how, despite everyday life, have just done the dang thing, loving what we do. I'm your host, Danny Augustine. A few years ago, I went from burnt out, dissatisfied with my SLP job to dusting off my big girl pants and sprinkling some determination in my 20-cent coffee and starting my own debt-free private practice. Now, I love my working career and wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. It was the support and wisdom from others around me that helped me refine my why. In this show, I hope that you're going to find support and wisdom of your own. Hey, friend. Today on the Speech Goods podcast, we have the one and only Ebony Green M.S, CCC-SLP. Ebony has a bachelor's degree from the University of Texas at Austin and a master's degree in communication sciences and disorders from Northern Arizona University. She's the owner of CASA Speech Therapy, LLC, and provides contracted speech therapy and occupational therapy services in public schools and private schools in the state of Arizona. Ebony is the founder of SLP CEO Solutions, a business consulting company that provides online education and support to speech-language pathologists, occupational therapists, and school psychologists who are passionate about working in special education as contracted providers. Ebony developed her signature School Contracting Masterclass program in 2020 to help fill the gap between the need in schools for contracted special education service providers and the skills needed to successfully respond to requests for proposals during the contracting process. To date, Ebony has helped dozens of speech-language pathologists learn about how to successfully bid on and obtain school contracts. All right, let's do this. Okay, so this episode with Ebony was super, super inspiring, and I think it's a conversation that we all really, really need to hear. We get into a little bit about this idea of developing an abundance mindset and sort of like overcoming a lot of the things and conceptions that she's had about money growing up. She talks about how she grew up in a low-income household and how she's really had to work on herself, and especially understanding and living in abundance with the financial success that she's been able to create for her family. She talks about how she started out her business small and being financially responsible in that. She gives us details about all of her other business ventures. Like, this woman is seriously just absolutely on fire and really has a heart for not only starting her own businesses, but also a heart for helping other people reach their goals and reach their dreams with the businesses that they start as well. You are going to love Ebony. She's just the real deal and kind of the bee's knees. So let's go get to this episode. Hello, 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 Ebony. How are you doing today?
Hi, Danny. I'm doing well. How are you?
Oh, so good. Ebony, you're the sweetest. You're not judging me for having wet hair as we're talking. And this is going to be on YouTube at some point. So we're just going to roll with it. So I appreciate you.
It is all good. I completely understand.
Yes, yes. Well, we just heard your amazing bio. You just accomplished like all the things, which is why I wanted to have you on the podcast. You're doing things with your private practice. I love like your focus on diversity within your private practice and hiring. And then you're also doing some things online with helping other SLPs get school contracts. So you've just like, and you're a mom, like you just have all the things going on. So I was like, I need to talk to this lady. So Ebony, can you tell us just a little about you and what makes you and your SLP journey unique?
Sure. Yeah. So, as it was mentioned in my bio, I own a private practice in the Phoenix area. I have a multidisciplinary private practice where we do speech, OT, PT. We also have music therapy and respite and rehabilitation services. I kind of started my practice with the vision to have a one-stop shop for therapists when it comes to the work setting that they get to work in. So I remember, when I was a therapist working at several different companies so that I could get a little bit of experience in the schools and experience in home health and experience just working, not on the same job every single day. I liked having that variety. And so my vision for CASA, which is the name of my company, is to have a one-stop shop, if you will, of different settings that therapists can work in, but they can still work for the same company. So at CASA, we do home health, we do clinic, we do teletherapy, we do schools. And I think that's kind of what makes my practice unique. As far as my journey as an entrepreneur and as a practice owner, I will say that the entire journey was pretty unique in my opinion. I went back to school as a mom. I was a non-traditional student. I actually had a career as a teacher before I transitioned into speech language pathology. So I did have children when I went back to school and changed my career to speech. I also started my private practice from the ground up with no loans. My husband is a finance executive, so he is very big on budgets and finances and savings and a lot of the things that you talk about, Danny. I'm very fortunate that my husband kind of got us started doing when we were really young. We got married right out of undergrad, so we were very young when we got married, and he started us with our 401ks and with savings and investing. So we actually are debt free, and we don't have any student loan payments, which is very nice because we both have graduate degrees. But it all comes down to I can't take credit and say that I was the planner, and I was the person who was making sure that we were making smart financial decisions. That was definitely my husband. But now as a business owner, I could totally see why that's important. And so that's just a little bit, I guess, about what makes me unique is just, like I said, going to school as a non-traditional student and then starting a business with no debt. I know some businesses, they take out loans, but that was kind of something we chose not to do. And I really am glad that we decided to start small and then eventually expand to where we are today.
So can you tell us a little bit more about if you don't mind, like the nitty gritty of starting debt free? Cause like I like my private practice is debt free. I started it debt free, but I am like a solo. I just hired a girl as a contractor, but like I don't have that desire to expand to multidisciplinary clinic. And I know, so I know it's a little bit, I just have, I have less cost, less overhead when it's just me and one other person. But can you tell us like how you're able to continue, how you started debt free and then growing and expanding debt free, which is freaking awesome. Love it.
Yes. Yeah. So basically, I hired my husband as the CFO because who better to trust with my business finances than the person who manages my personal finances. So he started us off just with a business plan that included a budget, and it was a very strict budget compared to what I wanted. I wanted a clinic right away, and I wanted, all these extra things that I didn't need, so to speak. So, I started out basically just doing home visits, and I remember as soon as I started my business, I wanted to stop doing home visits, and he was like, "No, this is what financially you can afford to do." And I remember looking at a clinic space that was, I think at the time that space was like $1,500 a month, and I was like, "We can afford this. It's only $1,500 a month. If I get $100 per visit, all it is 15 visits." And he was like, "No, you do not want to do that right now. You want to save. You want to make sure that you have money in the business bank account, because you never know what can happen." And I guess I was just under the impression that, well, if I see 15 patients and I make $1,500, then that should cover the cost of my overhead, right? But in reality, that is not the case. I quickly learned that insurance reimbursements are not what you expect them to be. I also learned that, paying people is going to happen before you pay yourself. And I did not realize that until I actually had to start running payroll, until I actually started checking my bank account to see if I was getting paid by insurances and nothing was coming through. And I just was so thankful that I decided to not go that route when it came to getting a clinic, right out of the gate, because it was going to really cost me, no pun intended, but it would have probably honestly put me out of business, because I also experienced a period when I was getting no money, no reimbursements, because my biller was not billing properly. And so I actually had to fire that biller because they were making all kinds of mistakes. And I was running payroll every 2 weeks, seeing money leave the account and no money coming in. So basically just, we didn't bite off more than we could chew.
I know at one point, like you okay, so you started smart, like you started small, you didn't take on you didn't bite off more than you could chew, essentially.
Right.
And then you grew pretty quickly. right? Like, can you tell us like how you grew and knowing how to grow, like especially within, wasn't it just within a few years? Correct me if I'm wrong.
It was. So I've never shared this story publicly. I think only a couple people know this because at the time, I guess I wasn't embarrassed. Yeah, I guess it was kind of embarrassing. But basically, the reason I grew so quickly is I remember when I started the business, I told my husband I needed $10,000 to start the business. And he said, no, I'm not going to give you $10,000. And I said, why not? So we got into this big disagreement because I was like, this is not just your money, this is our money, and I need it to start the business. He was like, no, we're not doing, like, you need to figure out how you're going to get the money to start the business. And so I was very mad at him. And I was like, okay, fine. I'm going to get the money from someone else. So I asked my mom to let me borrow $10,000. And my mom said, sure, I'll let you borrow the money. And so I borrowed it from her. And honestly, when I borrow money from someone, or I guess my husband was just he wanted me to basically like work hard, right? To understand that this is not like, here's $10,000 to blow off. So whenever my mom gave me that loan and whenever my husband was like, oh, you need to figure out how to get it if you want to start this business, it really put so much fuel to the fire that I had already started burning about entrepreneurship, that I was like, okay, I'm going to make this $10,000 back times 10. And I'm going to pay my mom back. And then I'm going to show my husband, you were sorry that you didn't let me get $10,000 out of our savings account for this business. So that is the real story I'm sharing. I'm letting you guys know the unedited version of what happened and why I grew so quickly. But it was this feeling of, I have to succeed. I cannot fail because my mom let me borrow this money. I need to pay her back. And I want to prove that I am going to kill it in this business. And so that's essentially what I did. And really, I didn't just think about, okay, how can I make money seeing patients? It was like, how can I make money seeing patients and doing other things that are going to bring revenue into my company? So I started researching how to teach classes in the community to parents. I started making connections with nonprofits in my area. I started just reaching out to people in my network, letting them know I started my business. I offered community classes and baby sign language classes. And so all of these little baskets that I was putting eggs into started generating these extra opportunities to make money. And then the big opportunity came when I got my first school contract. Having the school contract was what skyrocketed my business because it was a whole extra stream of revenue that did not require a biller, that did not require me to sit on the phone and fight with the insurance companies to get paid. And so that was the game changer. And when I figured out I could have my private practice and be a school contractor, and they can both make me money, it was like, okay, it's game over. I'm about to get as many contracts as I can. I'm about to continue putting eggs in both of these baskets because if one part of my business suffers, I still have the other part of my business to make me money. And so that is how I was able to pay back that loan. That is how I was able to, in my first year, have a six-figure revenue because I was hustling with getting extra streams of revenue in my business.
Get it? What? So you were just like, and I think that's a great point because on the show before, like I've had that discussion with people about multiple streams of income just for like someone as an individual. But I love that point you made about multiple streams of income for your business. Yes. Because you're 100% right. Like if all you're relying on is patient care, then when something like a global pandemic or like or one form of patient care, right?
Yeah.
In person versus teletherapy, and then classes, like Like, I love that. And it's just, I mean, you just hit the nail on the head. Like, first of all, it makes sense. You're generating income from multiple sources. And then you're also decreasing your risk if fit hits the shan, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
didn't you, I know for a while, at one point didn't you say that you had like started getting burnt out? You didn't say it just now, but I
Yeah.
follow you on Instagram.
Yeah.
You had started
So,
getting burnt out on entrepreneurship, right?
yeah. So I was working a lot of hours during that time that I was trying to scale. And it got to the point where I was like, okay, this is too much. Like, I'm working around the clock. I'm doing everything. I'm the HR person. I'm the therapist. I'm the, I'm all of the above. I'm doing like 5 people's jobs. And you have to do that when you start out as an entrepreneur. But I think I was afraid to hire because I thought that that was going to make me lose money because I was going to have to hire someone that was, not a therapist to help me do a lot of this stuff. And I met with a mentor of mine, and she said, honestly, it may seem as though this person is going to cost you money and not bring in any money, but if they're taking things off of your plate, then you can focus on making more money for the business, and they can take those things off your plate that are not, the things that you should be doing as the owner. As the CEO, there's certain things that are less money per hour when you think about paying someone to do them, then you could be making, and you could be making more money per hour. So anyway, I learned that I needed to delegate, and that delegation was actually going to help me continue to scale my business and continue to grow. And I could alleviate some of that burnout by having people help me with some of the things that I no longer needed to do. So, I don't need to be answering, where do we buy paper plates from? Questions like that are just not like, those are things that I don't need to have on my mind. I don't need to worry about those things. I need to be focusing on talking to potential business partners and responding to more contract possibilities. So those are some of the things that, I delegated a lot of those lower level tasks that don't require a CEO or a business owner to do. And that's really how I started to enjoy my job again and become less burnt out.
Yes, and I think as SLPs, like our personality type, like we think that we have to do everything. And I think part of it, and I'd love to get your opinion on this, Ebony, because I think part of it is really starting to understand how much your time is worth. And I think sometimes, like, for the sort of like culture that is SLP, is like, you got to do everything yourself. Like, I got this, like, I'm never going to admit that I need help. And it's like sort of trading that view for like, I can do everything, to my time is worth money. And like understanding that your time is worth money. I know that with the way that the culture is, especially like with insurance reimbursements and things like that, it's very easy for it to get in your head that your time isn't worth that much money, right? But when you really start to like value yourself as kind of stepping into like that CEO position. Don't you have like shirts and stuff that say SLP CEO? Yeah. We'll make sure that's linked in the show notes. But like sort of making that transition into that sort of CEO, and then that confidence of just being like, my time is worth more than answering who's going to get the paper plates. Like,
right.
Did you, how, like, at what point did you make that transition in your business from like that? Especially, I'm sure there came a point where like you not completely stopped, but you really stopped doing a lot of patient care. Yeah. I don't know if you still do patient care, but just transitioning to that CEO mindset. Like, can you tell us like when that happened and like what was going through your head at that time?
Yes. So, like I said, it was a very scary transition because I'm used to doing everything. I'm used to feeling like if I don't do it, someone else can do it, but they're not going to do it right.
Oh, so, girl, I feel you on that. I got to get over that too. Like, oh, yeah, they can do it, but they're not going to do it as good as I could. Like,
exactly.
Get over myself.
I had to get over that. I had to get over myself and trust people and really put systems into place that are going to allow people to succeed, to do it the way I want it to be done. So I remember it was I think it was over Christmas break, my first year in business. I started just putting together like PowerPoint presentations where I was doing basically like a, a recorded PowerPoint of orientation, so to speak, of this is how we do things at CASA. This is, our company vision. This is our mission statement. This is how we operate. So that whoever I hired can understand, what my vision was, and they could understand how to do the things that I was doing the way I wanted them to be done. And it took me a really long time over that break to record all of those PowerPoints, but it was the first step towards me saying, okay, I need to get my business to a point where I can hand over some of these tasks to someone else. Because if all I have is, how I want to do things and my vision and all of the things that I'm doing, if I just have all that stored in my head, I can never transfer this over to someone else. And so shortly after that, I felt comfortable hiring someone because it was all laid out. It was like, here you go. Here's the binder. Here's a PowerPoint full of the information that you need to be successful at this job. And I hired someone, and it was scary because it was overhead, and it wasn't a therapist that was going to quickly make that money back by seeing patients. But I mean, they completely took some of those small mundane tasks off my plate. And then I was able to grow even more. So after hiring that person, we basically were able to, double the number of patients that we were seeing, because I was able to, get on the phone and talk to people and do a lot of the marketing. And basically my responsibilities shifted to something else that was helping the business generate money. So today I have an assistant clinical director, and 2021 has been the year where I've hired the most support staff that I've ever had. I hired an assistant clinical director. I hired a marketing assistant. I have a full-time lead SLP who's doing a lot of the patient care that I was once doing. I also have an office manager. So these are all support people that 2.5 years ago, when I started my business, I would have never thought I could hire, in such a short period of time. But the reality is that the more I grow, the more support I need in order to continue to steer the ship. So I have 2 patients on my caseload, but the rest of my time is really spent negotiating contracts, talking to different people who, again, have shown interest in doing business with us, figuring out ways that we can continue to grow, and different things that we can do in our community to gain exposure, and just making sure that we execute the vision, which is to be the best in class provider of therapy services in Arizona. So it's a lot of very different from that therapist mentality where you just know to do therapy and that's kind of it. I really had to learn to step into that CEO role, and it just makes a big difference once you recognize that yes, you are going to need help, and while it may cost you money to get that help, you're going to make that money back. So yeah.
Yes. And if you don't mind, like, how did you, like, obviously there was a mindset shift, and that sort of like going from like, I'm the one creating income with direct patient care to I'm the one making the vision while other people are while other people are doing more of the lay work. What did you do to invest in yourself or to help you make that transition? Like, I've talked to like Hallie Bulkin and Teresa Richard, like they said they had to do they've done like mindset work and masterminds. And what did you do to kind of help you with that? Because it sounds like you also had a really good support system and you had mentors and all that like fabulous stuff.
Yes. So I did have great mentors. One of my mentors owns a successful private practice in my area, but I really always try to put myself in the room with other successful business women. It doesn't have to be people who are in the same industry as I am. Typically, I'm the only one in my industry when I go to networking events. But I think it's important to surround yourself with people who are doing the things that you want to do. So I started working once a week at a co-working space just for women. And all these women are entrepreneurs. And so being in that space definitely gives me that motivation that, okay, I can do this. I can be a boss. I can lead a team. I can lead a successful business. I also joined a mastermind group for local business women. And that was also helpful because, again, as an entrepreneur, it could be a very lonely journey sometimes when you're the owner of the company. You don't get to, talk to your coworkers about the ups and downs of your day, or, things that happen that keep you up at night. You have to kind of internalize those things. So when you surround yourself with other business women, at least for me, it was very refreshing to know that, okay, we all kind of are going through the same thing together. I'm able to share, those ups and downs with other business women without being judged. And most of all, just to get that support. Every time I go to networking events or, entrepreneurship events, I always leave feeling inspired because there's always someone there who's, 10 steps ahead of where I am. And I can visualize myself being in that person's shoes one day. So I think you have to kind of find the people that are going to inspire you to keep going, especially when things get hard, because you don't have as much support when you are the leader of the company. You're kind of expected to always, have your stuff together. You can never fall apart in front of your team. But if you have that support group, if you have that network of professional women that you meet with once a month, or just having a business bestie. I have a business bestie that I met a year ago, and we talk on the phone almost every week just about different things that come up. And it's surprising because a lot of the things we go through are exactly the same. A couple of weeks I called her and she was like, I can't really talk that long. My admin's out for the week. And I'm like, girl, mine too. Mine called out for an entire week as well. So I'm glad that we can share that pain together. So yeah, just having that support, having that group of people who are going to help you. And like I said, putting yourself in the room with people who are successful and who are where you want to be one day is what has helped me make that transition.
Oh, that was so good. Oh, that was so good. Okay. I love that. So can you tell us a little bit more about, because I know you got your private practice that's blowing up, multidisciplinary, and I love how you've been really intentional about like basically creating a place you would want to work at, right?
Exactly. Yes.
But you've also got your online business where you coach other SLPs to get school contracts. How did that was that something you started doing? Like, how did it even occur to you, like, to go on like this online route? How did you get started in that? And then what even made you split from the private practice? And I don't know if it was the multiple streams of income piece, but yes, just tell us all about it.
Okay. So, I, during the pandemic, noticed that there was some private practice owners that were having to close their doors, due to COVID. And it was honestly very scary, but also very sad to see that, people had to stop working towards their dreams because of this pandemic. This is something that nobody anticipated. And I thought to myself, wow, if I could teach other people how to make more money in their business so that they would have extra money when things like this happen, that would be great, because then I could save people from having to close down their private practice. And I reflected on the fact that the only reason I was able to keep my doors open because I just opened up a clinic in February, my first clinic in February of 2020. And then, of course, the pandemic happened in March. By March, we had to shut the clinic down. We didn't.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you opened your clinic a month before the pandemic hit. Wow.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Our first clinic location was open February of 2020, March 15th, I remember, was the last day that I worked out of that clinic. And then everybody was working from home or doing teletherapy. But the reason I was able to stay open was because I had school contracts. So while people weren't seeing patients, we were still getting our checks in every month because kids were still needing services. And yes, those kids had to get services from home, but still, we were still billing upwards of $10,000 to $20,000 a month because kids still had to get their services. This is something that's mandated, right? You can't not do what it says in the IEP. They got to get their services. And so I thought to myself, if I could teach other private practice owners how to do this, they would probably be able to keep their doors open when the pandemic, if another pandemic happens. And so I started researching in a weekend how to teach an online course. And it was so overwhelming because I never done this before. There's so many different platforms out there, and there's so many different people out there teaching you how to do it. But one thing I learned is that if you really want to learn how to do something, you can literally go to Google University and YouTube University and figure out at least how to get started with whatever it is that you want to do, literally anything. So I, of course, started Googling. I started watching YouTube videos. I found a really good coach who has a course on how to make a course and watched it. And within 2 weeks, I developed this course. I did kind of collect some market research data and asked in a Facebook group if anyone would be interested in learning about school contracts. And I thought, oh, maybe 10, 15 people would respond. I got 200 people saying, yes, I want to learn how to get school contracts. And so I knew, okay, this is definitely a need. This is something that I have to do if this many people want to learn. And it also showed me that, it's one of those things where we don't have this knowledge. We don't get this knowledge in school. So the people that are getting the contracts are people who are not therapists and who know about business, but they have no idea about therapy, because these therapists are saying, I want to learn how to get school contracts, and no one's taught them how to do this. Why is that? Why is that nobody has taught us as therapists how to get these school contracts when we're the ones providing the therapy? And so I developed this course. And let me preface this by saying I forgot to tell the reason why I wanted to teach this course is because right at the end of the school year, I had won a huge contract. I had a couple of like small contracts that I was doing prior to that, but I got my first big contract worth $500,000 before the pandemic. And so that was just like, I'm secure. Like I wasn't really worried about not seeing patients at home. I wasn't worried about patients not coming to the clinic because I just gotten a $500,000 school contract. So I wanted to share that knowledge to help other SLPs gain that security in their business. And that's kind of how it started.
And I love how you, and I've talked about this before on the podcast with other guests, but like I love it when like the same themes keep happening. Like as I have people on that are doing the dang thing and being awesome and being successful, like you found a hole in the market. Like you didn't just wait for it to come to you or whatever. Like
Right.
it kind of happened. I mean, a global pandemic, you didn't
Yeah.
make that happen.
Right.
But you had the willpower enough to like notice that there was a need in the market and then be like, I'm going to fill that need.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that. And it's also like this idea that and I think sometimes SLPs, because I get DMs a lot from people who are like interested in business, and they ask me about like the money and business and all that stuff. And I think because no one else has done it before, it makes them very hesitant. Like,
Right.
oh, well, no one else is doing this. And I look at it like, hey, no one else is doing this. Like,
Exactly. So that's an opportunity.
yes, 100%. Like, it's an opportunity.
Yeah. And it was scary, to be honest, because I thought, oh my gosh, what if people like think this course is dumb? What if I'm not an expert. I've only been doing private practice for 2.5 years. Like I haven't been doing this for 20 years. But if I can just help one person get a contract, that can change their entire lifestyle. It could change their entire, not just their business, but their livelihood, right? They could pay off some of their debt. They could do something that they weren't able to do before because of their finances. So I was just like, I'm just going to go for it. And so I put the course together. In fact, I was developing the course while I taught the first cohort. So it wasn't completely done. There was some modules that I was still working on. And I remember just being like, I need this to be as valuable as possible. So I'm going to have other experts come on. So I contacted a friend of mine who's an attorney who happened to be a contracts attorney. And I was like, hey, can you teach a module on this course about school contracts? And he was like, yeah, absolutely. And then my husband, of course, being the finance person that he is, I was like, can you teach about the finances? Because when you get into school contracts, people don't realize that your overhead does go up. You have to pay subcontractors if you're going to be using subcontractors. Let's say you have 5 schools that you're contracted with. Well, you can't do all 5 of those schools by yourself. So you're going to have to hire people to provide those services. And most school contracts, you're working every single day. So that billing starts to go up. And if you don't have the money to pay people, then, it's going to be tough because you don't get paid by the school district right away. You have to wait until you invoice. So he came on there and kind of talked about, okay, how do you manage your cash flow so that you can pay your staff before you get paid by the schools? And so yeah, it was definitely, like you said, an opportunity to fill that need. And while it was scary and it was something that I saw nobody else doing, I just felt like this is the perfect time for me to launch this, and hopefully it is successful. And so far, I think it's been pretty successful. We've had so many people get contracts, and way more than I ever thought. And then I've currently had about 85 people enrolled in my course. I usually launch 4 times a year, and it's been 1 year since I launched. So I'm excited about the future. And this has actually inspired me to expand even more. So what I'm currently working on is a all new platform. It's called the SLP Business Suite. And this is going to be a platform where you can take all sorts of business courses as a SLP entrepreneur. So I was inspired by the fact that, I get a lot of DMs about just business in general, not necessarily school contracts. And I don't want to turn people away. I want to help people. And so I thought, wow, wouldn't it be nice if we had like just a website where people can take any sort of business course that they want. If they want to learn how to get school contracts, they can take that course. If they want to learn how to transition from home health to a clinic, they can take a whole course on how do you do that. I did that, 2 years ago. So I can help someone figure out what are the steps that I took to go from driving everywhere to having my own brick and mortar. If they want to learn how to start a teachers pay teacher store, they can learn that. So that this is a new platform that I'm really excited about. And again, it's all about sharing the knowledge, in my opinion. I don't think that we should all feel like we have to keep, our gifts to ourselves. We should share those gifts with the world and help other people make money and help other people succeed. So that's just my philosophy is, I'm an open book. I like to share things. I like to see people win. And I've always been a helper and a teacher by nature. So.
And I think that goes back to, and this is another recurrent theme that I'm hearing from the guests that I have on, is this idea of an abundance mindset. Because like people can like smell it on you when you're just like trying to like hoard all the knowledge and
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. I mean, there's a line between, I don't like being compensated for your time. Like obviously you can't spend hours and hours in your day answering DMs as much as you'd like to. But it's also understanding that like, I want to, sharing your knowledge doesn't automatically mean that you will have less, if that makes sense. Like it's not this, giving to someone else doesn't mean that you are going to be without.
I agree. Yeah. So it's funny because when I started teaching my school contracts course, I was telling my mother-in-law about it. And she goes, well, you're kind of helping the other people win contracts that you might bid on if you're telling them how to win contracts. And I said, yeah, that might be true, but there's so many contracts out there. There is an abundance of clients. There's a lot of schools out there. There's a lot of students out there. So I'm not concerned about winning every single contract. Like I want other people to win contracts as well. I want to see other SLPs win just like I was able to win. And to me, I'd rather see an SLP win a contract than some business person that doesn't really care about therapy and they just want to get the contract because it's going to make them money. So yeah, I definitely feel like, having that abundance mindset doesn't, it helps you share your resources and your gifts with others, and it always comes back, tenfold.
I love that. Oh, and everybody listening, the links for Ebony's contract class, the school
School
contract class,
contracts.
and is the SLP Biz Suite, is that live yet?
It is
Or
not live yet. So this
okay.
is just this is just kind of a preview, if you will,
Okay.
but we will be going live very soon. We're currently recording content for that, but yes, you can check out the school contracting masterclass. That is it's live, but we do open enrollment usually every couple of months. So the website for that is the www.schoolcontractingmasterclass.com.
Awesome. And we're recording this, like, what is today? Today's August 8th. So if you're listening to this right when the episode comes out, it's going to be more like beginning to mid September. So if you're interested, I don't know, Ebony, like what your timeline is, but don't be afraid to like go click on the links, as I will include them all in the show
Yes.
notes, so you can go check that out. I love it. Okay. I'm going to totally switch gears because I know I want to be respectful of your time, but there was some things that you mentioned. So for listeners out there, in case none of y'all knew, before guests come on the podcast, I have them fill out like a little form just to like get some information, because there's always things about everyone that I didn't know. There's a lot that I just learned about, even though I follow you on Instagram. There's a lot of things that I've already learned about you. But one thing
Yeah.
I really wanted to ask you about was something that you mentioned just about like creating, and I know it's something you talk about a lot on your Instagram, is creating generational wealth and breaking the cycle of poverty in your family. And I know that's such like an amazing topic for me. And then you also kind of mentioned like this idea of learning how to adjust to not living in sort of that poverty mindset anymore, to
Mm-hmm.
now, I mean, being like upper middle class, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that, just like in your experience with it?
Yeah. So I grew up low income. I grew up in I'm the child of an immigrant. So my mom, came to the US with not a lot of resources, but she was always a very hard worker. And I think that is a big factor in my own work ethic, is seeing her work so hard. But we did have very little money. So when I started really making money, it was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do with this money. Like, um, my husband again was always into investing, and he was always into saving, but I really had to start thinking about how people with money think about their money. And and it's always, how do I use this money to make more money? So we started investing. I remember the first time I paid taxes, I was so upset because I was like, wait, people pay this much in taxes? Like, how is this okay? Like, why are we paying? And so it was like, okay, now I get it. Like, this is why people save their money, because you end up paying a lot of different, just because you have a lot of money doesn't mean that like your resources are, indefinite. Like, you have to save for all these different things that come up. So yeah, paying taxes is like, I that's one of the first things I always make sure that I have money for set aside um every quarter. We pay our taxes, and I mean, seeing that money leave my account still makes my heart, drop just a little bit and gives me knots in my stomach. But um that's kind of where I had to adjust my thinking. It's like, okay, um I need to focus on managing my money so that I can continue to make money, and investing my money in ways that are going to help my money continue to grow. So like, one of the things that I was doing before was keeping all of my money just in a regular bank account, because I was used to having a regular bank account. And it honestly, I think I had a little bit of like PTSD, because my husband was like, well, you probably should invest it in like, um, a special account where you can't just like take your money out all the time, but you'll grow a lot of like interest or whatever. And I was like, well, I don't want my money tied up in this other account where I can't like access it all. Like, I need to be able to get my money out he's like, it's okay. Like, it's going to be safe. No one's going to take your money out, but you're going to earn more interest by putting it in this account, as opposed to just keeping it in a regular savings account or regular checking account. And so I had to learn to be like, okay, what he's saying makes sense. this is way more money than I need to actually have access to every single day. And so making those subtle changes took some time because I wasn't used to that. I was used to living paycheck to paycheck, especially in college. You know, I was in a lot of debt, and like as soon as I would get paid, all my money went to bills. And but now it's like we're building that generational wealth. We're making decisions that are going to help our children, you know, not have to be in debt and not have to, you know, pay for their college. And you know, we're basically giving them the resources that we didn't have. So yeah, it was a I'm still making some some of that transition, so to speak, with, you know, just my overall mindset, because I did come basically from, you know, I won't say nothing, but just very little, to now, you know, I feel like we always say that we made it because, you know, we can I think you said the other day, like most Americans don't have like $1,000 for an emergency or something like that. Like if we had an emergency, we can pay for it. You know, it's not like where are we going to get the money? And so yeah, I think that's important, is recognizing that when you do finally start to make money, if you come from, you know, a low income background, like you have to kind of shift your mindset and recognize that the resources that you have are going to continue to grow, but you have to be good stewards of the resources. Otherwise, you can end up right back, you know, where you started.
Yes, I love that. And it's this idea that you like not having that scarcity mindset of money where like if I spend it or if I invest it, it's never going to come back to me. But then also, and I love that word that you used, was just being a good steward of your money and being a good manager of it. Because when you manage it well, and when you manage it well and you manage it responsibly, you have, you know, most of us are so afraid of like those oh crap moments, right?
Uh-huh.
But when you're a good steward of your money and you manage it well, you have money for those oh crap moments,
Yeah.
right? Like just like you said, like you kind of had this idea that like you needed to keep it all that you had right there.
Yeah.
And you made the point of like, okay, I don't need this much money for like my day-to-day spending. Even if there was an
Right.
emergency, I
No.
don't need, right. Like I don't need this much money, even if like
Yeah.
even if we needed to like, you know, get out of Dodge for something or like whatever.
Right.
So I think that's a really, thank you so much for sharing that. Cause I find that so, I mean, you're literally like changing the pathways in your brain, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No. And that's the reality, is like, you know, I am not used to having a lot of resources and a lot of money. So I'm like, well, why wouldn't I just want to keep it all? Like I could, you know, just put it all in a safe in the house or something. I don't even want to put it in the bank, but it's like, that doesn't really make sense. Like you need to change those thoughts and know that you're going to continue to have those resources. You're going to continue to have that if you do take care of it and if you do what's right.
Right. And just having,
Yeah.
and being smart with it and being responsible
Yes,
and
that's
things
what I was
like
trying to say.
that.
Be smart with it. Yes.
Yes, I love it. So, okay, I gotta ask. This is like a nitty-gritty question. Aside from having to pay taxes, on like your, you know, I made it money, was there like I'm being nosy. Was there like a certain like was there a purchase or like a thing that you did when you like, you know, really started building your business and things like that? I know for
Yeah.
some people, like they finally got the nice car or like the Louis Vuitton bag or something like that. Like looking back, is there any moment where like you were like, I'm finally doing this? Like I've done
Yes. Yeah. So I have an obsession with luxury handbags and
it.
luxury shoes. My husband's so great. He's always spoiled me, you know, on special occasions. Usually he would save up and buy me like whenever he would get bonuses from work, he would, you know, spend it on a pair of Louboutins or a Louis Vuitton purse or something. He's always spoiled me in that way. But when I was able to buy my own Louis Vuitton purse, that was definitely like a moment of, oh my gosh, I'm doing this. I
I
was
made
able to
it.
go in there, yes, and buy my own purse. And it was like, usually he was the one saying, okay, I'm gonna, you know, here's your Christmas gift, and it was a purse or whatever. But to be able to go into the store and say, no, babe, I got this. I'm gonna buy it. It was definitely a moment where I felt proud of myself and where I'm like, okay, I'm doing this. You know, I like to use your phrase, doing the damn thing or doing the darn thing. Excuse me. Um,
All good. I like it.
so yeah, I like to treat myself. I obviously, make sure that I pay all my bills and, all of our financial obligations are taken care of. But whenever I make a little extra money, I do like to spend on some handbags. I have one of my Louis right here next to me.
Yeah. What are your
um,
babies?
One of my babies. Yes. And so I think that, everyone deserves to get that one thing that makes them feel, like they're doing it. Like
Hmm.
this is what you've been working for and you deserve to get it. So for me, it's my purses and shoes, definitely.
And I love that. And I think, and everyone has their thing. And I think some people think that because like I talk about money and finance, that like I'm stingy and I'm like, Louis Vuitton is evil, blah, blah, blah. But like, I like to me, and I love, I don't know if you've read any of Ramit's stuff.
Hmm. Yeah.
But I love his philosophy of like, spend extravagantly on the things that you love and then like cut cost on the things that you don't care about, and just this idea of like knowing what brings you joy, knowing what you love, and also having all of, first of all, have your foundation there. Like there's nothing wrong with a Louis Vuitton purse. Like you want your Louis Vuitton, go buy your Louis Vuitton. If you don't, if you can't pay your car note and your
Mm-mm.
mortgage, then Louis Vuitton is not really your friend right now, right?
No, no.
Right?
Yeah. And just to put it into perspective, um, like I said, I purchase my luxury handbags and shoes whenever I feel like I've met a goal or whenever I've reached a milestone in my business.
Yes.
But we don't just go all out and go crazy. We just actually sold a rental property that we owned for almost a decade. And right now the market's crazy. So we're like, oh, this is crazy in the sense that it's a good seller's market.
Yeah.
So we thought, we're going to go ahead and sell this property. Well, we sold the property, and it was so, I truly feel like my mindset about money has shifted because we did get, quite a bit in proceeds from that sale. But my first thought wasn't, oh my God, what are we going to buy with this? It was like, okay, let's put this in a savings account. Let's put this in, let's fund our children's college. Let's do something that, is going to help this money continue to grow. It wasn't like, well, how quick can we get rid of this money because we're not going to have this type of money anymore, So no, I did not go buy a Louis Vuitton bag when we got the proceeds from our house sale because that's something that, I didn't feel was necessary at that time. I know that if I want to go buy a Louis Vuitton bag, I can go buy one tomorrow, but it's to me more about, doing it when you feel like the time is right and not doing it because it's an impulse or because you have the money there and you need to spend it. It's more of a, oh, this would be nice to have. Let me think about it. And then, you plan and you decide, okay, I'm going to go ahead and purchase this. But yeah, I said all that to say, I know it's kind of rambling, but I said all that to say, like, you know, you your mindset starts to shift. Definitely when you start to view money, I view it more as, you know, almost as energy. It's not something that is that I feel makes or breaks me anymore, like it did when I didn't have money.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was my dog. There.
Okay.
And I think, who have I heard that from before? The money is energy thing. I think that was that Hallie. I don't remember, but yes, I love that. Like, it's not this thing. It's not this. It's not this. I have to, if I have it now and I'll never ever get it back. And I,
Exactly.
and I think that's when people go into that, like, say either I save it all and never spend it,
Yeah.
or I spend it all on stuff because I don't know if I'm ever going to get this much money again.
Yeah.
And just like you said, like, it just goes back to like being intentional with your buying decisions, like whatever it is,
Mhm.
and knowing what your numbers are, and
Mhm.
then knowing what your priorities are. Like, clearly, like some of the first things that you thought about when you got that big chunk of money from a rental property was like your future and
Yeah.
investments and kids. And I think that's part of it too, is hope for your future.
Yes.
Like that, because that's what investing is. You're not spending this money now so that it can grow for you and pay you in the future. And I think if you don't really have hope for that, and if you're not looking forward to that, it does, it makes sense why you would just go spend it all, or you would just kind of like hoard it all. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Awesome. Well, Ebony, this was awesome. I love it. I love it. Thank you.
I'm so glad that we got a chance to finally meet. I know we kept having little things come up and forgetting time zones and all sorts of stuff.
You figure after like doing this podcast for a couple months, I'd be better at time zones. I'm bad. I'm terrible. But
it was not all you though. It was me too. I was terrible at remembering last time. But I'm glad we finally got to chat, and I love what you're doing in our community of SLPs, which is bringing awareness to, something that I feel is very taboo in our field, and it's money. It's, the thing that nobody wants to talk about. Nobody wants to talk about how much money they make. Nobody wants to talk about, whether they're happy with the salary that they have, or most people, that I talk to that work in certain settings, they are often like, well, we don't make enough money in this setting, so I have to do XYZ to make more money. It's like, well, can we talk about this? Can we have a dialogue about this? Because, nobody wants to talk about it. So I commend you for stepping out of, I don't know if that was, if you stepped out of your comfort zone, but I know I would feel uncomfortable discussing money in a field where people really don't want to talk about it, and just educating and helping people realize. I love your post about you can become a millionaire SLP, because a lot of people don't believe that that is something that they can do, or that's a possibility. But it's not about how much money you make. It's about how you're investing and what you're doing with the money that you have. So I think that's awesome.
Yes, 100%. And I feel it's like it's something that people are so unhappy about in the field, but you're right, but nobody wants to talk about it. But that's just, and Ebony, I don't know if you know this about me, that's just my personality. Like, you don't talk about it? Let's talk about it.
Yeah. And I love that. I love that about you.
Well, this was such a treat. And thank you so much for just sharing your story. I think like your story is a really great example of why I even created this podcast, is for people like you to have a platform to come on and share their stories, to give everyone else out there hope that you can do it. Get out the Facebook group where everyone's talking about how everything sucks. Get out the Facebook group. Go follow Ebony on Instagram. She's always posting such valuable content, and like very specific content, not just like all this fluffy stuff that doesn't really give me anything to do. Like, like I know I'm like supposed to be happy about stuff, but give me some real things. Come on now.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Yeah. So all of Ebony's information is in the show notes. Go follow her. She's amazing. Check out her SLP contracts to coins, correct? That's it, right?
Yes. So it's SLP contracts to coins I'm sorry. That was my previous. So I rebranded.
What? Girl,
yeah, I rebranded a couple of times. It's SLP Contracts Queen is the Instagram handle, but it was Contracts to Coins when I first started. So you've been a loyal follower for quite some time, because that was my previous one. And I recently rebranded because again, I'm just getting all these requests for, different courses and different tips and, different things that people need. So I want to obviously try to meet the needs of my audience, but yes, check me out on Instagram. And I will keep everyone posted on the release for the new platform, which will hopefully be soon.
Yes, I'm so excited. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Ebony, for coming on. Thank you for your time and for sharing your story.
Thank you, Danny.
Yes, have a great day.
We'll talk again soon. Bye.
Oh, yes. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you want to hear more no fluff, getting the dang thing done stuff for myself and other real life SLPs, be sure to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or pledge a small amount on patreon.com/speechgoods. If you found this content valuable, please share it with others so we can get this message out there. And if you haven't already, join us on Instagram. Handle is @speechgoods. See you there.